Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I've got Nick Farabaugh from PennLive.com. We're going to talk about Davante Adams hitting the market and what it does to the free agency market at wide receiver. The Steelers obviously have needs there. What will they do? Where do we think it impacts things? We'll also talk about the same thing for the cornerbacks with Darius Slayton hitting the market, how that impact things, and also Saquon Barkley with free agency approaching. He signs a big extension, which means that impacts the running back market. What does that mean for Najee Harris and the Steelers' plans at running back? All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And as I said before, we're joined by the man himself. He is Nick Farabaugh from PennLive.com. He covers the Steelers there. Nick, you've been doing some great reporting. We got to hang out a lot in Indianapolis, but now we're back. And of course, as we've said for about a month or so, and everyone keeps talking about free agency, oh, go get this guy, go get that guy. We say, wait. There's going to be some new people to get cut. Now, this one wasn't a shocker. Davante Adams is always going to get cut. But now that Davante Adams is officially on the market, not being traded, a lot of people think the Steelers should go after him. Nick, you and I have been talking about free agent wide receivers, what it feels like forever at this point. What does this do to the free agent wide receiver pool, if anything? And who do you think the Steelers should and will prioritize?
Well, I think he becomes the immediate top wide receiver on the market, to be quite honest with you. I know Chris Godwin is there, but the ankle injury and the medicals are, I think, a big question mark with him. And Davante was still elite last year, even though he's 32 years old. So I would say that. I think that's a big, nice boost to the wide receiver market. But I also think Davante's this type of guy that is very particular about where he wants to play, right? I think we all are kind of feeling it's probably either going to be with Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, or out west. Like, that's what it feels like, right? One of those two. I guess if you want to really put your loop into it, you could say Pittsburgh is west of New York City, so maybe you want to put that in. You could do that, but I don't know. I don't really think Pittsburgh's very likely right now, unless they land Aaron Rodgers, who I don't think that's going to happen. So, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm sure they're going to try. I think they should. I think he's a wide receiver one, even though he's older. I think they should at least give it a shot and see what happens because I think this team needs talent, man. And he's a top talent, and it doesn't preclude you from drafting a guy. It doesn't preclude you from making another move. But I do think they should throw their hat in the ring. But I don't think they're going to necessarily go all in on him, right? It's not going to be like last year where they went all in on Brandon Ayuk, crashed and burned, and couldn't find anybody. Mm-hmm. I think the guy that we're going to look at, that we're going to see them really go after, is Darius Slayton. That's who I feel like is going to be the guy. And then I think there's another name that they're going to go after, Christian Kirk. I think that's going to be the other one. We talk about the cut candidates. He's another one, whether he's a trade or a cut candidate. I think he's a guy that they'll look at. So those two guys, Darius Slayton and Christian Kirk, are a little more, I guess, low-key. They're not as splashy as a Davante Adams or a Chris Godwin or even an Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen. But they're really solid players. They can fit in next to George Pickens, could fill in the blanks a little bit. I like their fit in Pittsburgh. And so I think those two names make a lot of sense.
No, I feel you on that. And you and I have been talking about Darius Slayton on this show for it seems like, 2 months now, saying like, hey, even more, 4 months. You were saying the Steelers were interested in trading for Darius Slayton as they were interested in trading for Christian Kirk before he broke his collarbone. So those guys holding those positions, that makes a lot of sense. The Steelers do need to add talent at wide receiver. Both of those guys project as solid wide receiver twos that can line up next to George Pickens. And then, maybe they add a wide receiver in the draft. And then all of a sudden you have Pickens, you have Slayton/Kirk, you have Roman Wilson, you have Calvin Austin, and then you have a rookie that you probably take. I think they probably take in the second round there. And I think there's some good fits that you can make happen with that group as a wide receiver unit. But I think that's the key here, Nick, is the Steelers are going to make a splash in free agency somewhere. When I say a splash, I don't mean like a mega super duper signing, but I mean like good signings of guys that are in the upper part of a free agent market of a certain position. I just don't think it's going to be wide receiver. And that's why I don't think Davante Adams is going to be the move, because I think they're saving up to go to cornerback. And we'll talk about cornerback in a bit here. But I just think that with this receiver class, if you're getting a young receiver for the future, and I think that is a priority for the Steelers, I think you got to get it no later than the second. Maybe you're lucky if you get the third round. But like, I look at this wide receiver class and I think if they can get one of these guys in the second round, that can be your future. That if you don't like George Pickens after this season, he becomes your new priority of that. Or if you like George Pickens, you sign him to a 3 to 4 year deal. Then by the time that both of these guys' contracts are up, then you have another decision to make. But that to me is what the Steelers could be looking at here. And if you're drafting a guy in the second round, I think it lowers the priority to land the biggest name in free agency, like a Davante Adams.
I think it lowers the priority, but it sure wouldn't hurt. Like that's
No, I agree with that.
And here's the thing. I know, you said rather go corner, but I don't think it has to be an either or proposition. They have a record amount of cap space. They can
have a lot of cap this year.
Happen. And here's the other thing I think they could do. I think they could sign TJ Watt to an extension. I think they could. And they should. I think they should. There's a few reasons why. One, it frees up cap space. Two, it gets ahead of the Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson deals that are going to be coming down the pipeline. So you get ahead of that. That's just smart GMing. And TJ Watt's going to get an extension at some point this summer. I think we're almost certain of that. So getting it done sooner rather than later helps you out. And so that could make, a big move like a Davante Adams feel more likely. I will say, even if you land a guy like Davante Adams, right? Davante Adams, for example, was 32. That should not preclude you from going into the draft and saying, man, we need to draft a guy in round 2. I mean, if the right guy's there, even in round 1, honestly, at that point, George Pickens and Calvin Austin are both free agents. You have no clue what Roman Wilson necessarily is because of the injuries in year 1. You can easily argue wide receiver is a current need, but it's just as big of a future need, right? That's what the Steelers are probably going to look to do here, I think, at wide receivers. They're going to fill that current need in free agency, and then that future need that they're going to draft for, because next year there's such upheaval in the room, is going to be for the future need. And we saw them do this last year when they drafted Mason McCormick to get that future need. Now, obviously, he was thrust in as an immediate need because of the Daniels injury, but that obviously helped them out, and he was going to be a big part of the plans this year anyways. And so that's going to be a key part of the Steelers thing. I don't love the mid-round receivers in this class. I think there's a few names, though. I like guys like Jack Besh. I like Alec Iominor. I like a few guys in there. Trey Harris, Jalen Noel, I think, is an interesting player. So there are some names that I think are interesting. And then on day 3, I've even found a few interesting names like Kyle Williams and Ricky White that I think have some gem potential. But really, this receiver class is the 4, I think, at the top that really pop for me. Golden, Burden, Egbuka, and McMillan, those are the 4. I think, if you can get one of those 21, it's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea, no. I think that the sweet spot for the Steelers is either that first round or that second round at wide receiver this year. And with the needs at defensive line, I think that the prospects that could fall to them at 21 at D-line, if they landed one at D-line, I think they could get a comparable wide receiver that would be useful to them very quickly, in fact. By if they went in the second round and say got Jack Besh or an Alec Iominor, or if they got like a Jaden Higgins type of guy in that process, or Jalen Noel. I think there's going to be interesting. Jalen Noel ran a 4.39 40-yard dash. I did not expect him to be that fast. So I was pretty shocked there. But there's guys that I was impressed by. Alec Iominor, like he's a bigger guy who ran very well, and the Steelers like bigger guys. I think there's second round options, but I'm with you in that. Once you get past those second round guys, like I'm not wild about this, about the middle part. Like if you wait to the back end of day 2 to draft wide receiver, you could be wanting quite a bit if you pick wide receiver there.
Yeah, I mean, I will say there's one name in that third round I come back to pretty often. Ty Felton out of Maryland. I really love him.
The one speed dude.
He's a vertical threat.
Yeah.
If they bring back Russell Wilson, he is like the perfect third round pick for them to make there.
That makes sense.
He's a deep ball threat, elite ball tracker with elite body control. But he's not really a contested catch guy. He's not only a contested catch guy, rather he is a good contested catch guy. He's not only that. So he's a fun player. But yeah, man, it's rough after that. And so I think you got to take one of those outside guys or those speedy guys. I like, we talk about Iominor and Besh. Those are my 2 guys currently in round 2, just because of what they do. They block. They can win inside or outside. They run a full route tree. They really fit either quarterback, I think, whether they have Fields or Wilson. I think you can easily project both those guys into the scheme for both of them. And so I really like both those guys. So those are the two guys I would look at in the mid rounds of the draft. And you talk about Noel run a 4.3, not surprising everybody. I did not see Matthew Golden's 4.3, 4.2.
No, neither did I. I was like, my
stunning.
goodness.
That was stunning. But the tape's really good. So Matthew Golden at 21. I think a lot of people were hesitant at first about that prospect, thinking maybe
it's less hesitant now.
Yeah, he should be. He's a really good football player. So he is worth the 21st pick.
When I saw his separation on tape, I was like, okay, cool. So he's a good separator. But when I see separation and speed and the ball skills that he has, I was like, all right, I'm not out on wide receiver at 21 anymore. Because I do think he can be that guy. But again, all of that I think does impact a little bit of the wide receiver plans in free agency, or at least the priority of that they set getting a wide receiver and what type of wide receiver there. But cornerback, also a bigger thing. And I think they're going to be bigger players for a cornerback in free agency than necessarily a wide receiver. I want to get Nick's thoughts on that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you that we are also sponsored by Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. AutoShip is a game changer. You can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, or any essentials so you never run out. You can easily change or cancel at any point in time. They are fast in their delivery. When you order it, it arrives quickly, and AutoShip saves time and makes sure that you never run out of your favorite foods or treats for your pets. Be sure to check out Chewy, because Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description of this podcast. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Nick Farabaugh here, continuing to talk about free agency as more things happen. Now, I talked briefly about Darius Slay, not Slayton, but Slay, with Alan Saunders on yesterday's episode, just going over like, hey, he got released, but like I don't think he's the move there. He's an older guy. But Nick, you laid out some options recently in some of the work that you've done for PennLive.com, and some of the names you threw out there, bigger names that are at the top of the list. Charvarius Ward, Carlton Davis, DJ Reed. Those are some of the biggest names at cornerback free agency in this market. Do you foresee the Steelers really landing one of those guys, or is that just the Steelers kicking the tires and then probably signing one of those cornerbacks in that tier just below them?
I mean, I think they're going to go for it. I really do. Listen, they have cap space to spend.
They do.
And listen, they've done it before where they landed top players at a position. I mean, they landed Patrick Queen last year. He was the top linebacker on the market. It's not like there's some foreign thing to them, right? They have started to kind of spread their wings a little bit with Omar Khan and have been willing to spend that money in free agency for star players. And I think that's what's going to happen here at corner. Now, DJ Reed, I think might be a little less likely of those three. I think he's a little bit more of I think the scheme fit with DJ Reed's a little bit harder to project than Ward and Davis. I think those two are like plug and play, allow you to play man coverage, allow you to do different things. I think Reed's a little different, played a little bit of a different type of scheme with the Jets. But I love his game. I think he could do it. I just think it's clean. I think Charvarius Ward is just such a clean fit, right? You don't have to turn on any other tape than the San Francisco tape, because San Francisco did so much similar to what the Steelers do. The cover 3 stuff is just all there, right? It's just a bunch of cover 3, it's a bunch of man-to-man. They press them up sometimes. They play some bail. They play all the stuff the Steelers play a lot. And so I think that is such an easy transition You also look, I think, at Carlton Davis because of how blitz heavy Aaron Glenn was at times. They were able to put him in man-to-man, so you don't have a lot of questions. I think that's the big thing that I'm looking for in the Steelers' outside corners. How can I trust you in man-to-man? Because I thought that's the one thing they were limited by a little bit this year. It maybe made them a little hesitant to blitz. They didn't really trust Dante Jackson. They didn't trust their slot corners. So I think those three all have very good man coverage skills and all kind of fit that. So I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to land one of those three. Maybe if you want to throw in someone like Byron Murphy, Paulson Adebo, and one of those names, go for it. But I do think one of those three names probably. And then the other guy I think they're going to go after, I think Nate Hobbs. I think he is.
Nate Hobbs makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
He makes a lot of sense with him in the slot, man. He is a ball hawk. He is a fearless man.
Thank you for not saying what I think you were about to say.
Yeah. I if you know what I was about to say, that is what he is.
Yes.
He is fearless. He is a ball hawk and fearless. And he is a fun player, man. I love Nate Hobbs. I think he's very underrated. He's had some injury issues which pop up, but I also think the Steelers are okay, with that a little bit because one, he's not going to be too expensive, so he's not going to break the bank. And two, I think you can trust Beanie Bishop to be a really solid guy that can insert there if Hobbs does go down. So I really like Hobbs as a slot corner. Cost effectiveness, I think, is great there for Hobbs.
I mean, he's 26 years old. It makes a lot of sense. You get a vet slot corner guy, plug him in, and then you can get a top outside guy. And then all of a sudden, those cornerbacks, they look set. And then you could go into this draft class and you aren't pressed to draft a cornerback as early. And look, cornerback is still it's still something that you should be looking for to get younger there. Look at what the Eagles did last year in getting guys that really helped that crew. But getting these two guys here, I think, allows you to give more flexibility to say, hey, you know what? D-line, wide receiver, knock those out early. And then if you want to go get a running back, another wide receiver, double down on one of those positions, an offensive lineman to further add to that group. I think all of those become more on the table. Or if you think your quarterback is there in the third round, if you're one of those, if you want to jump at that a little earlier, it gives you that option there where you don't have to pick a cornerback if you sign these two guys. But again, I like some of the cornerbacks in this draft class. Like, I think that there's the guys in the first round. I don't think cornerback's the first round move for the Steelers this year. Granted, I really like a Will Johnson, a Jahdae Barron, a Darian Porter. But if they were sitting there at some point and they found a way to get Azariah Thomas, I think that would be a really interesting pick for them. I think there's other guys that fit that, but certainly you land these two guys or two guys like them in this free agency period, it lessens the need at cornerback and allows you to focus on these other positions and be a little bit more aggressive in going after, say, some playmaker wide receivers. And Nick, you and I have talked about this too. There's a really good chance they double down at least one of those positions, a D tackle, wide receiver. They could double down in both in this draft class.
They certainly could. They have the draft capital to do it. And listen, corner is just super deep in free agency. I think people miss at large. This is a pretty bad free agency group. It's not really very good. So a lot of teams are just going to throw money, probably at their own guys, probably at their young guys, try to get them locked up. But corner is the exception. There are 12 corners that are legitimately good. And so the Steelers going after two of them and getting a slot and getting an outside guy, fixing that room. I mean, they don't have to draft one if they want to. They could, but they don't have to. They have two young guys already. They have Trice and they have Bishop. Both those guys they like and they want to develop. And so that's going to be something that can really, really enhance their draft. I think what corner does by fixing corner in free agency, I also think, Chris, it allows them to take a swing on a running back earlier if they want. If they want to take a running back in round 2, if they want a Travion Henderson, if they want a Caleb Johnson, they want to Quinshawn Judkins. I think that's the kind of path to it, right? You got to fix corner and you got to get one more position kind of fixed well enough to where you're feeling comfortable and you say, we have the luxury to take that guy there and add another pick that is really infusing this offensive skill group. And I think that's going to be key. And so I think corner is a big time path to that. And I think you need that kind of flexibility when you're a team that needs to build up your talent on the offensive side of the football.
I'm right with you there. I think it makes a lot of sense. I've been saying corner and free agency is going to be is the plan, and why D tackle and wide receiver are going to be the priorities at the top of the draft. It looks more and more like that. The free agency approaches next week. We'll keep you covered in that. But Free agency also getting impacted by the extensions being given, including Saquon Barkley's deal. We'll talk about that and the impact on the running back market and Najee Harris, as well as what the Steelers are planning to do at running back. That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com. Nick, let's talk about the running back situation right now in the NFL. Of course, looking at Saquon Barkley, the top running back in football, maybe the best player in football last year. He signed a 2-year extension with the Eagles, $41.2 million totals. 36 of that is guaranteed. Big money and well-deserved for Saquon Barkley. Now, that is money at the top of the running back market that like kind of sets like, okay, that this position is being valued a little bit better. But when you look at guys like Najee Harris, who I still think Najee Harris right now is, if as it's slated, he's to be a free agent. I think he is the best free agent running back available in the NFL right now, just based off of experience, where they are in their career and what they can bring to the table. That being said, this isn't a great free agent market for running backs, and this is a very good running back draft class. And with that, I'm not so sure that Najee Harris is going to be able to key in on Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, showing that running backs are still very valuable in the NFL, and get this mega contract that he's hoping for. And, maybe he gets $10+ million a year. Maybe he does get that. I don't know. But do you think that this is kind of the situation why we've heard murmurs that maybe he could return back to the Steelers simply because his camp's a little worried about what he could actually get on the open market right now?
I mean, sure. I think the Steelers have already expressed to him that if his market's depressed, they'll welcome him back, right? I mean, listen, the Steelers are not going to pay more than $6, maybe $7 million, right? Yeah. I mean, the 5th-year option they turned down was less than $7. So it's key to note that. Now, Najee Harris is in this interesting position where really there's only one other running back on the market that I think compares to him, which is Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones is older than him. Even though there's a lot of tread on Najee's tires, he's 27, and he's a dependable back. He's never missed a game in his entire career, which is really important when you're a running back. When you're that dependable, when you're that type of guy, I think there's going to be teams in the market for you. And so I think what Saquon's deal is going to showcase, Chris, it's not going to give Najee this mega contract, right? Because Saquon got 20 a year. They're not in the same tier. But Najee is this decent starter, and those guys are going to naturally ride the tidal wave a little up, right? Yeah. We've seen this happen at other positions before where the top goes way up and then the middle follows. Najee's in that middle. And so I'm looking at deals like Ramondre Stevenson getting $9 million a year, James Conner getting around that. And if I'm Najee Harris with this deal, I feel like I can get more than that. And I think he will. I think he will get more than that. I think he's going to get 9.5, 10 a year from some team. I think there's going to be a team out there like the Raiders, maybe the Chargers, someone like that that's going to offer Najee Harris and say, hey, we'll give you a nice bag this year because you're the only free agent running back. And I think that does matter, no matter kind of how you slice it. And so I do think he's going to have a nice market just because all the things we talked about, even though it's a really good running back draft class, teams know that. And what you're going to get when you have strengths of position like running back is right now in this draft, what you get from these teams is teams that usually wouldn't be in the running back market snap up guys, right? Mm-hmm. So you might get a team that has a future need at running back that maybe would have waited till next year, take a guy they wouldn't take earlier. And so that can dwindle out and dry up way faster than you think. And so I do think some team's going to take a chance on Najee and get him a nice year.
I can see Najee. Look, anyone who watches this show knows I've been a very positive person on Najee Harris. I think that he's been undervalued in Pittsburgh, partially because of just what's been around him. The offensive line has not matured while he's been in Pittsburgh. Quarterback play hasn't been stellar, and that's kind of limited what he's been able to do. But I also think that the Steelers shouldn't pay him big money to stick around. I think that they should take advantage of this draft class, and they should do that. Now, again, like you said, if it is a repressed market, if he finds out, man, I'm not getting what I wanted, let me go back to the place that knows me and where I can work with Mike Tomlin and Eddie Faulkner, who he really likes. maybe that's a thing there, and the Steelers can sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal just to keep him around while they figure out the things out. But if he were to get that money, yeah, and he should go out. And I think if he gets in a system that has a better O-line or a more experienced and put together O-line, then he's going to be able to get that. But that aside, I think, again, a big emphasis why the Steelers don't feel the need to keep him. One is because I think Omar Khan looks at the market value of what running backs are in general, but also because this draft class has so many talented guys in it. And I talked about that with Alan Saunders yesterday. So I know some people are like, running backs again? Yes, running backs again. But because that Saquon Barkley deal, it just reminds you of that. But again, I think that if the Steelers wound it up with a Damian Martinez, a Jadon Blue, a Devin Neal, Caleb Johnson's one of those earlier picks that I think that if they get in the second round, okay, cool. But I think there's a chance that even if they waited to the 4th round or the 5th round, they could still get a guy who pairs well with Jaylen Warren and helps them in a big way.
Yeah, I do think that. And listen, Najee Harris, man, I mean, this guy's been a consummate professional the whole way. He's going to want to cash in. Running backs get really one deal, and this is probably going to be his one deal. Yeah. And so that's a big thing. And for the Steelers, I mean, it's no sweating it. There's so many good running backs, as you mentioned. I really like the idea of them. I'm kind of warming up to it, not as a first-round running back, but I like the idea of a second-round running back. As long as you have one of those needs at receiver or D-line, like not in an urgent spot, I think it makes sense to add another really good talent. Because, let's be real. Let's look around the offense, right? That offense just needs talent. You just need good players. And running back, you built out your O-line already. So you drafted 3 offensive linemen last year. It feels like the right time, to draft a running back, right? It feels like, okay, the run game is going to start to come together. Faltano is going to be back. Frazier McCormick looked good. Hopefully Broderick Jones takes a step forward, and you got Isaac Seumalo at guard. This feels like the right time to go ahead and say, okay, time for that running back to come in because you kind of built some of the infrastructure already around him. And so it's the right time to get him. And so there are so many options. We mentioned some of the round 2 options. Talk about the Jadon Blue option. Bashil Tootin, I think, is a real fun player. One of my favorite guys that I recently discovered, I guess not discovered because I've obviously watched SEC games, but just really like his tape. Jarquez Hunter out of Auburn, man. If you guys haven't watched this guy, he is legit. He's going to go in round 3 or round 4. He's got speed. I think he ran a 4.4 at the combine. Real fun. He's got chops in the receiving game. He should be getting more hype, but he's a really fun player. He fits what the Steelers want. He's a zone runner too. He's a really fun player. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring him in on a top 30 visit, show some interest in him. He fits what they want really there.
Right, a 4.44 in the 40-yard dash, certainly impressive there, and plenty of options. But again, I think that's why this is an interesting free agent market in a lot of respects, and why I think the Steelers are not as concerned about signing that group and looking more at this running back class here. Yeah, Bashil Tootin, 4.32, as well as there's 3 guys who ran a sub 4.4 40-yard dash, and Tootin, Blue, and Brashard Smith out of SMU. That is just insane for running back speed. And something that, I talked about with Ray Fittipaldo on the North Shore Drive podcast, the potential of maybe running back's a position you double down at, because maybe you get your Caleb Johnson in the 2nd round, and then you come back in the 5th and you say, maybe that's where you can go get a Brashard Smith or, a Trevor Etienne, who also ran a 4.42, and you can get a running back who is your 1-2 option with Warren, and then a running back who's more like a kick returner and a 3rd option for you there in this offense. And like you said, this team can use talent wherever it can get on offense.
Yeah, it's really fun because the archetypes of running backs are all over the place. So if you get a speed back early, say you take Travion Henderson, but then you want to come back and get a big bodied back and you want Damian Martinez in the 5th. It's really fun like that. You can mix and match. If you get a Caleb Johnson, you come back in the 5th and get RJ Harvey. There's just so many different names, and they're all legitimately solid players that are going to have roles in the NFL. And, there are so many other names that we didn't even mention. Dylan Sampson. There's so many good players in this class at running back. It is a stupid deep class. I think it's deeper than the defensive line. And I think we talked about the defensive line being deep. This running back class, I think you're going to find guys in around 6'7" that are legitimately going to have running back 3 returner roles and give you legit options.
Absolutely. He's Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com. Nick, thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at FarabaughFB. Make sure to read the stuff over at PennLive.com. We got great stuff coming out all the time. Make sure to watch the YouTube channel. Have a podcast every Tuesday.
Absolutely. He's Nick Farabaugh. Thank you, Nick, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social medias. Same handle everywhere, at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday. Breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. Back here tomorrow with more on your Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.